Hello friends, welcome to NSK tutorial. Today we'll see the topic types of exception in Java with an example. In our previous sessions we have discussed the exception, error, what are the compile time exceptions and runtime exceptions. In today's topic we'll see the built-in exception and user-defined exception with an example. Let's go to the next. Built-in exception. Built-in exceptions, one of the example is arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is unchecked exception which will occur at runtime. It is thrown when an exceptional condition has occurred in an arithmetic operation. If you see the below example, inside the main method, inside the try block, I have declared two variables, int a equal to 30, b equal to 0. When we are dividing 30 divided by 0, we'll get the infinite. We cannot divide this. In this case, we'll get the arithmetic exception. If you see an example, already I have written an example. Here, the same example I have written inside the try block. I have implemented the logic which will cause the arithmetic exception, and here I am handling that exception. Let me run this program. If we run this program, here arithmetic exception has raised. That's why the control has sent to the catch block. Inside the catch block we have the statement like we cannot divide a number by 0. The same thing has been printed here. Next, go to the array index out of bound exception. Array index out of bound exception is unchecked exception which will occur at runtime, which will face when we'll face the array index out of bound exception. When we are trying to access the illegal index, it means, for example, in an array, integer array, if we have 3 elements, if we are trying to access the element which is not exist, example 4, 5, 6, which is not exist, which is having only 3 elements, we can access this integer till 3 elements. When we try to access the 4th element, we'll get the array index out of bound exception. Example, if you see this below block which I have written in the try block, int sum is equal to a of 1 plus a of 4. Here this is the a reference. A of 1 means this is 20. Arrays will be stored the values from 0. This is 0th element, this is first element, this is second element. First element is 20 and we don't have the 4th element. Here we'll get the array index out of bound exception. When we get this array index out of bound exception, the controller will throw to the catch block. In the catch block, we are returning a message accessing array index position is not exist. This particular block we have handled and we are printing this message. After that, we have written a small piece of code to performing the sum of element 1 plus 2, the element 1 and element 2. The count will be 50. Let's go to the example, array index out of bound exception. Let me run the same program. Accessing array index position is not exist. See, here the catch, here the exception has raised and it has catched here and next statement has been executed. Let me delete this program. It is every time asking a permission to execute. Okay, and next, class not found exception. Class not found exception is checked exception Checked exception means which will occur at compile time. When class not found exception occurred, when we are trying to access the class which is not exist in the package or in the application, that time we'll get the class not found exception. For example, if you see the below example, com.sadakat.nsk.tutorial package should have my test class, but this my test class is not exist in the same package. This class I am trying to access by using class.funname. This time we'll face the class not found exception. There is one more same scenario is we have, that is no class definition found. Class not found exception and no class definition found exception both are similarly same, except class not found exception is checked exception which will occur at compile time. No class definition exception is unchecked exception which will occur at runtime. Let me see the example. Class not found exception. If you see inside this package we don't have my test class. Let me run this. See, I am getting class not found exception. Class not found exception. This specific class is not exist in this package. Let's see the next exception. Next we have covered three exception in the single example. That is file not found exception, IO exception and null point exception. Here file not found exception and IO exception both are checked exception which will occur at compile time. What is mean by file not found exception? When file not found exception will occur? If you see the below example here, I am creating the file object, I am passing the path. Inside this path, if this file is exist, we'll be able to read and we'll be able to access the file. If this file is not exist, we'll get the file not found exception. This piece of code has to be handled. The same thing we have done and we have handled this piece of code. In this place, file reader will throw the file not found exception. Here we have handled the exception, the accessing file does not exist or not able to access. Once we have handled the file not found exception and we need to close, here we have opened the file reader object. We have opened the file. The opened file we need to close. When we are trying to close the file, we'll get the IO exception, means the input output exception. When we are trying to access the input, if it is not available, we'll get this input output exception. That also we have handled in the finally block. Why we have handled in the finally block? All close connections, all closing files will perform in the finally block. Then again we'll get the system null pointer exception. Why null pointer exception will face here? For example, if we have a file here, we'll be able to access, and to close the file, and we need to declare the file object instance outside of this try block to access that in the finally, to close that in the finally block, and we need to initialize this with the null value. If we don't have the file here, if we'll not be able to access the file, the file reader will be by default assigned with the null. This null exception we need to handle while closing of the file. While closing up the file, this we need to handle. The same thing we have done here. The null point exception we have handled. This null point exception is unchecked exception. This will get at the program execution time. It means runtime will get this. Let me check the example. See, file not found exception. If we run this program, see, the accessing file does not exist or not be able to access, and it is returning the fr value as null. Let me go to the next one. Number format exception. Number format exception is unchecked exception. This will occur at the program runtime. When we are trying to convert string into integer, we'll get this number format exception. And the next thing, string index out of bound exception. String index out of bound exception is unchecked exception which will occur at runtime. It is thrown by string class methods to indicate that an index is either negative or greater than the size of the string. For example, if you see the below program, the string length is less than 50. Even though if we are trying to access this string at the 50th position, the 50th position will not be there. That time we'll get the string and index out of bound exception. There are many other exceptions we have in Java program, in Java library. We have different types of exceptions, many scenarios we have in different scenarios, different exceptions we'll get. In our next session, we'll discuss about the user defined exceptions with an example. Until that, bye friends. Thank you. Please subscribe.